Welcome. This is Heartstock Radio. I'm your host, Carol Murphy, and Daniel Hogan is in the studio today helping guide us and assist us all the way. Today, I would just like to first start out by saying thank you for tuning in, and also that you can email us at heartstockradio@gmail.com. We'd always love to hear from entrepreneurs and others who are using business as a force for good. Today, our guest is B. Alink, and she is the founder and the designer of the Alinker. In just a moment, B will be with us, and she'll tell us all about what she is up to. This is Heartstock. I'm your host, Carol Murphy. This is Heartstock Radio, and today our guest is B. Alink, and we're pre-recording this on a beautiful sunny fall day here in my home study in Butte, Montana. And B, hi, where are you joining us from?
Hi, Carol. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I'm calling in from Toronto, the unceded territories of many Indigenous nations.
So it's true, and the same goes here in Butte, Montana. Can you give our listeners a little intro here? What is the Alinker and who you are?
Mm-hmm. Who I am, that is a complicated question in itself. No.
And I love that.
Well, we might get to that later. But my name is B. Alink. I was born and raised in the Netherlands, came to Canada after 10 years international work in 2008, and have been here since 2008 and have established the Alinker company. Started in 2011, now 5 years in the market.
What is the Alinker?
Physically speaking, it is a 3-wheel walking bike with 2 front wheels, an overarching frame to a smaller back wheel, and a seating assembly on top. So you can actually walk on wheels. And I designed the Alinker because, it was actually after a comment of my mom when she said, completely out of the blue, when we were walking on some marketplace in the Netherlands, and we passed by some people that were using electrical scooters and rollerbladers, and then totally out of the blue, she said, "Over my dead body, will I ever use one of those things?" My mom being a bit of a stubborn Dutch woman, obviously. But I was curious to that comment, and what I realized, and I had a conversation with her, like, well, where did that come from, and what do you actually mean? And what was underneath that is that she did not want to, she actually caught herself in her own judgment. She did not want to be looked at as she looked at those people. And then from there, I realized that medical devices emphasize the disability and create a social divide between people with and without disabilities. And I thought that's to me, it's a justice issue, right? So I was like, why are medical devices a technical solution for a body with a problem? Because we treat, the moment you have a problem with your body, we treat you as a body with a problem and forget that you're actually a human being that wants to live an active and engaged life. So I set out to design the Alinker, to build something so cool that people would love to use it, and so cool that it would overcome the difference between people with and without disabilities.
And are you an engineer? Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that and what you did before developing the Alinker.
Again, that's a very layered question. I am a certified woodworker. Then I became a restoration architect, and I did construction civil engineering, construction supervision. And with that, the 10 years international work was always managing huge reconstruction projects of hundreds of schools or roads or medical clinics, that kind of stuff, in countries like Afghanistan and Aceh, after that huge tsunami in Indonesia and Sri Lanka or Kosovo or Kenya or the Sudan, mostly. So, yeah. And then those 10 years, that lasted 10 years, and then I came to Canada.
Were you working for your own organization, or how did you find these amazing projects?
Well, I never felt home in the Netherlands, and I always wanted to go away from the Netherlands. I think at the root of that, there's two things. One, my father died when I was 8, and people disappeared around us, which made me understand as an 8-year-old girl that people choose their own comfort if they're not very comfortable talking about death. They choose their comfort over showing up for you. You can't talk about death in the Netherlands because that's a huge taboo. So I was actually super lonely after my father died. Our family was sort of isolated, and not being able to talk about death made us isolated. And then I'm a gender weirdo. I'm not a typical girl, not a typical boy, but something in between or whatever. But I never found language for who I am. And so the experience in the Netherlands of feeling the weirdo in a culture where I should be able to be one of the I should understand my own role in my own culture, but I never did. I was always the weirdo, and I didn't understand that. So I think I went into international work. In retrospect, I think I chose to put myself in a position where I was the weirdo, the exception, as a white person in Kenya. I put myself there, so now I can see it coming. But in the Netherlands, I didn't see it coming because it's my culture. So why would I be, stigmatized or ostracized or judged? I think those two things motivated to leave the Netherlands. And then I always wanted to go to countries where I felt more purpose, where I would be happier than I would in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, at that time, I felt that people were very much talking about money and more money and status and bigger houses. And I just did not understand what it was about. If you can't talk about or share the essence of life, the fact that we're dying, and what are we doing here in the meantime, I lose sense of purpose. So, the easiest way to get to another country, and I wanted to go to Africa, was to write some missionaries. I'm not religious by any means, but it is the easiest way into Africa if you don't want to go through organizations, which I didn't know yet. I wanted to sort of figure it out by myself a little bit. So I wrote a few missionaries, and one of them in Kenya I wrote back, and he said, yep, you can come and set up a carpentry training here. That's what I asked him. So I set up a carpentry training in the slums of Kisumu in western Kenya against Victoria Lake. Yeah, street boys, street girls, and I taught them how to plane raw timber into into planed timber, because I looked a little bit around there and I was like, that was in the time that many people were dying of the AIDS pandemic. This is not the first pandemic that we have. And the poor people in the slums could not afford a coffin. And I thought, you're already one of the poorest people, and then the last dignity to you and your family is taken away because your family can't afford a coffin. And that, again, was a justice issue. When I looked around in the market, the raw timber was really cheap, and the plain timber was very expensive. And I thought, I can plane. So I taught street boys and girls to plane raw timber into plain timber, and then we made coffins. Very beautiful, very cheap coffins, but very beautiful for the poorest people to have a dignified funeral, at least. So that's how I got into international work, and then it just grew from one project to the other. And I don't know, and very quickly I was asked to do projects. I got job offers from different countries and different organizations that picked up what I was doing, and then I never wrote a cover letter anymore, so to speak. Yeah.
And what were some of those other projects like?
Well, in Aceh, after that huge tsunami, first I went to Sri Lanka to do to set up the reconstruction projects of schools. So I established a child-friendly school design for UNICEF that was implementing for UNICEF, and worked with the government of Sri Lanka to ban the use of asbestos in the schools as they were being rebuilt. I was there for 3 months and got that together. We got the first plans for schools, did site assessments, and did the tsunami damage assessment. Because in Sri Lanka, it was only the tsunami that damaged the schools. And actually, that was a whole different thing because they had and the earthquake and the tsunami. So that was a whole different damage scenario there, and rebuilding scenario for that matter too. So after those 3 months that I set up the whole project in Sri Lanka, hired staff, and my colleague stayed there. The two of us set up the whole project. He stayed there, and then I was asked to go to Aceh because it was the damage was so much bigger there.
To where? I'm sorry.
To Aceh, on Sumatra in Indonesia, when that huge tsunami hit in 2004 at Christmas. Right? And so there I built 500 schools, implemented UNOPS projects and safe schools. That was one of the things. I trained engineers and architects to build different schools than what they had built before the tsunami, because that was not compatible with the earthquake zoning that had to be adjusted after the massive earthquake and ongoing earthquakes after that zone had been inactive for 200 years or something. That earthquake marked the earthquake zone again. So they had built completely incompatible buildings for the kind of earthquake damage that happened at that time, let alone the tsunami. So I trained the engineers, architects to become the Ministry of Public Works, to implement different building standards and different building codes to a different earthquake zoning now. Well, people don't want to change, so that was an issue. Yeah, I understand it, but this is how we do it. Like, and you want to pancake children into a building that's going to collapse in the next earthquake? I don't think so. But anyway, so the implementing those things and figuring out how to work with people that they're willing to accept different ways of doing things, because it might actually be safer for your children. That's always an issue. So that was a big challenge and a very interesting challenge. What the challenge is that you're inside a very different culture. And so I'm not the outsider to come and tell them what they need to do. But the challenge for me is to understand what's happening locally. If they talk about local taxes, for example, and you come in as a foreigner and see the local tax systems, i.e. contractors paying off other contractors to get a contract, we call that then corruption. But if you call it corruption, you've got nowhere to go. You don't have an end with people because you don't build relationships. You're the foreigner that judges their system. So my challenge was always like, what are they calling taxes? How is that working? And how can we improve for the sake of children's lives after the next earthquake? How can we improve the building standards and get contractors to build at least the quality that I want, that is needed for the safety? And those are like big puzzles. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. So I actually developed a whole tendering, a way to tender the contracts for the schools based on their tax system. But now with the outcome that they got the money that they wanted and I got the quality that I wanted. Mm. So that's
a win-win.
That's just puzzles.
Yes. And we're going to take our midway point break here, and in just a moment, we shall be back with B. This is Heartstock. This is Heartstock Radio. I'm your host, Carol Murphy, and today we are speaking with B. Alink, and she is the founder and the developer of the Alinker. Hi again, B.
Hi. Hi, Carol.
So, I have a lot of questions about the Alinker. And you shared your story earlier about the inspiration that your mother gave you. And where did you go from there and how did you develop it? I know that these kinds of projects with products, physical live products, can be challenging.
Definitely. And it's extra challenging when you're a woman in the field of predominantly dudes doing that stuff.
Yep.
Being a woman-owned and woman-led company has a few challenges because investors and that kind of stuff is generally male-focused. And to give a little example, there's less than 3% of venture capital money that goes to women-owned companies. We're not a minority. And in owning businesses, we're also not a minority. So the world is a little bit skewed. And that means that if you're a female entrepreneur trying to set up a business in a technical field as inventing a bike and trying to manufacture that, there's a few challenges that guys wouldn't have. Now, I'm not very adverse to challenges. I like challenges. And as I said before the break, like I've done big projects of multi-million dollars building schools in different environments, 3.5 years in Afghanistan, for example. So I have had my share of challenges and trying to, find ways to make stuff work. And that's always my motivation. Like, how can we make it work together? I know something, you know something, together we know more. You have something, I have something else. And together we can, if we put that together and not meet on the differences between us, but meet on the things that we have in common. And if there's a purpose that we can both be part of, it becomes easier. So being rooted in my purpose is actually always the starting point for whatever I do. It doesn't really matter what I do. It's always being true to who I choose to be. If I choose to be a kind person, which I did, then being kind is a really challenging thing in this world because, being congruent with being kind is kind of a challenge. For example, you go to the supermarket and there's not many products that you can buy saying that you're still a kind person, because being part of, the industry that does plastic around vegetables is not very kind to the environment. Buying a piece of chocolate, knowing that there's no slave-free chocolate is not very kind. So trying to be kind and being congruent with being kind is a daily practice of wanting to be aware and wanting that awareness to have consequences for your actions. And you can't be 100% kind when you live in a city because there's many practices that are just not kind to other people, to the environment, to the world. So that's always my daily practice. Like, how am I a kind person? It's not so much what I do, it's who I am, who I choose to be, and then I can do whatever. But it's always how I show up. Because at the end of the day, I want to look in the mirror. It's like, yep, I like you. I want to go to bed with you. That's sort of what the end of today is for me. And if I can't say that because I haven't been kind as I could have been kind, I don't sleep well. I want to sleep well. Does that answer your question, or did I go off on a tangent there?
No. I think that's very important. So were you self-funded, or did you eventually find folks that you were aligned with to help fund this project? Were you bootstrapped?
How do I say that? Of course, yeah, no, I didn't have any money at the beginning. And that's not quite true because I had a job that was an okay paying job. When I came to Canada, I managed a big project to produce glass for the new airport in Doha with a glass studio in Vancouver. And that paid okay. And I had some money saved from the international work because I don't spend much on myself and those salaries are ridiculous in international work. So I self-financed a lot of the prototypes in the beginning. And then at a certain time, my money was running out and I didn't have time to do my job anymore. And I needed more money and time to make more prototypes. So I quit my job And then at a meetup somewhere in Vancouver, I met a guy who said like, "Oh, I know the perfect investor for you." And, got talking with him, got introduced, and he became the very first angel. And he helped me. I didn't even know what a share in a company was. I had no idea. And then this first guy said like, "I could be your mentor too." And he's still one of my best people that I have around me. There's been angels over time to come up around us, always at the right time. But I think people are attracted because it's not a business to make money. I mean, of course, we make money as we sell bikes in order to do what we can do. But people are attracted to our business because it's not about making money. It's about everything else that allows us, or what the Alinker allows us to talk about. A healthcare system we don't have. We have a sick care system. We don't have a healthcare system. So you talk about stuff that people get attracted to. They're willing to engage with you, and they're willing to be part of something because they're attracted to something. And so bootstrapping is one of those scarcity language things that I never use. I don't focus on not having money or not having time or not having whatever. I always focus on where can we focus that we become attractive, so people are attracted to something and live in abundance in that way. I don't live in scarcity. I refuse to live in scarcity because that's the system that holds us prisoner in feeling small, living in little segments of, whatever minorities we might be part of. I don't believe in segments.
And any other partners have helped along the way? Where is the Alinker made, for example?
Well, in Vancouver, I made the first prototypes, the conceptual prototypes with Toby Cycleworks, a very special guy who does completely weird in his workshop. And that was perfect for me to figure out if what I had in mind would actually work. Because I'm a woodworker, so I made some wooden mock-ups. And with the wooden mock-ups, I went to Toby and he said, "Do you think that I can just translate whatever you make in wood into aluminum?" And I was like, "I'm paying you to make the prototype, so better get on it." we were always messing around with each other. The very classical issue between architects and engineers. Engineers think that architects are just full of because they're just designing stuff that doesn't work. And architects think that engineers suck because they're only linear and they go on cheapest and whatever. So it was that classical thing, and we had a lot of fun making those prototypes. And then once the thing worked and the concept was proven, I went to a partner in the Netherlands. I'm from the Netherlands originally, so I know the bike industry a little bit there. And I got introduced to a bike manufacturer in the Netherlands, who then introduced us to their counterpart in Taiwan. And we made 7 more pre-production prototypes to make it work and affordable and quality. And then you do the engineering testing for weight capacity and all that kind of stuff. So that was with the partner in the Netherlands. And then we're still with the same partner in Taiwan because quality there is really high. And it's a really good partnership.
What advice? We've got just about 5 minutes left here. And I'm wondering what words of wisdom you may have for others in this space. They have a great idea. They have a product that will help folks, and they're just starting out.
They're just starting out, yes. Well, sometimes I think, like, if I'd known what was in front of me, you would stop. So don't think about the future. It's one of the
yes, it's harder than you think, right?
Yeah. Entrepreneurs are crazy people, obviously, because they always see the sun shine. And then there's all the obstacles that you have to deal with. But just look at the shining sun and just go. If you really have a good idea and you're the right person to do that, and you know that, whether you're the right person or not, and you have to do everything in the beginning. And the joy gets there when you find people, when you have the capacity to hire people around you that can do certain things way better than you. And then you can get them to do whatever they are good at. And then you get a bit of a team, and that's really joyful. And then when you break even and when it's actually starting to run, that's fun. It's a lot of fun. With the Alinker, people's lives dramatically change from having agency back, independence, being able to go out and about again, being able to use their legs. It activates your brain. So people say, like, I'm tired after using the Alinker, but I feel energized. And we have indications that by activating the brain wants to work right. And so by activating the brain can reroute or make new neural pathways to your legs, for example. And if you sit the whole day, then your brain is not so active as it should be. So the more you activate the brain, the more the brain can actually motor your body again, or find neural pathways around lesions of MS in your brain, for example. The lesions are an obstruction for certain traffic, information traffic. But if your brain is activated and it can find new pathways around the lesions, you don't get rid of MS, but you can deal with the symptoms so much better. And that kind of stuff is really exciting to see. Of course, that people get their life back. We've got people that have MS, and I'm thinking about a certain person right now, Heather. She's around 60 somewhere, barely walks and cannot walk without AFOs, the braces around her lower legs. And 2 years later, now she's running a 50K Marine Corps marathon, for example. That's really rewarding to see the difference it makes for people and how other Alinker users get together and do events together and find community. And, it's focusing on who we are and who we choose to be. That's always the crux. And if we choose to be people that want to be in community, we find others and we can have a lot more fun. And then we're messing with the assumptions about disabilities. To the point that a woman a while ago asked me, she phoned me and she said, I'm sorry, I don't have a disability, but can I still be part of your family? Does that work? Can I be part of the community? And I was like, awesome. That was the biggest compliment that anybody could have given us. Mm. Like apologizing for not having a disability, but can they please be part of the community? Because isolation is a way bigger problem in our society than the physical that people deal with. Right? So indeed. You create community where people are accepted for the weirdos we are. And ultimately, of course, I created this community for myself because I need a community where I can be my own weird me. And other people feel attracted because they can be their own weird them. We're all weirdos. Whoever came up with a mainstream is a system that benefits from us feeling that there's mainstream and we're all in little segments of minorities. I don't buy into that stuff.
And how might folks find you, B? We've kind of exhausted our time, but I know we could go on talking much longer.
Well, my name is B. Alink, B-E, 2 capital letters. That comes from Barbara Elizabeth, but Barbara or Elizabeth or Babs never worked for me. Those are all gender-specific names. And I was like, B-E, that works. I'm B, I'm just B. That's also my pronouns. So B. Alink on Facebook, on Instagram, on the website, the Alinker website. Yeah, we're all over the internet.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being on Heartstock and sharing your story.
Well, thanks, Carol, for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Indeed. This is Heartstock. I'm your host, Carol Murphy, and we'll be back next week. Peace.
Heartstock Radio is a production of KBMF 102.5 Butte America Radio. Hear our programs every Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time via livestream at butteamericaradio.org.